In the winter of 1452, a Hungarian cannon founder named Orban walked into Constantinople looking for work. He was one of the best bronze casters alive. He could build weapons that no one else in Europe could build, and he offered those weapons to the Byzantine Emperor Constantine XI, the ruler of what had been the most powerful empire on earth for over 1,000 years. Constantine wanted what Orban was selling. He understood exactly what a bronze bombard could do. He had seen gunpowder tear through fortification walls in the Peloponnese. He was not ignorant, he was not blind, he was broke. The Byzantine Empire had shrunk to the footprint of Constantinople itself. The treasury was empty. The population had collapsed from 500,000 to fewer than 50,000. The streets were half deserted. The harbor was almost bare. The only thing the empire still had was its walls. The Theodosian walls, 3 layers of fortification running 4 miles across the peninsula. Moat, outer wall, inner wall, towers every 50 paces. They had held for over 1,000 years. Every army that had tried to break them had failed. Arabs, Bulgars, Vikings, Crusaders. The walls were not just a defense, they were an identity. To be Byzantine was to be the people behind the walls. Constantine offered Orban a position, a salary. It was less than what a blacksmith earned in Budapest. And there was no bronze, no timber, no materials, just a paycheck and a promise. Orban stayed for 9 weeks. Nothing arrived. He repaired small guns in the imperial armory. He waited, and then he left. He walked out through the Adrianople Gate, headed north into Ottoman territory, and made his way to the court of Sultan Mehmed II. Mehmed was 21 years old. European courts had dismissed him as an unthreatening boy. They were wrong. Mehmed had been studying Constantinople's walls since childhood. When Orban arrived and offered his services, Mehmed did not hesitate. He asked one question: "Can you break the walls of Constantinople?" Orban said, "I can shatter to dust not only these walls, but the very walls of Babylon itself." Mehmed gave him everything: unlimited bronze, unlimited timber, unlimited labor, a salary 10 times what Constantine had offered, gifts, a house, a foundry. He mobilized the resources of an empire behind a single man's capability.
3 months later, Orban's foundry produced the largest cannon the world had ever seen. 27 feet long, 8-inch thick bronze walls, a 30-inch bore that could fire a stone ball weighing half a ton over a mile. They tested it outside the palace. The ground shook. The sound carried for miles. The ball buried itself 3 feet deep in frozen earth. Mehmed looked at the crater and said, "Build me more." 60 oxen dragged the cannon across 140 miles of road to Constantinople. 200 men walked beside it. Carpenters reinforced every bridge in advance. The journey took weeks. On April 6th, 1453, Orban's cannon spoke against the Theodosian walls for the first time. The stone ball struck the outer fortification and punched inward. Blocks that had stood for 1,000 years shattered. A cloud of limestone dust coated the defenders in white. From a distance, they looked like ghosts. The walls had cracked for the first time in 1,000 years. 7 shots per day, each shot followed by 3 hours of reloading. Warm olive oil poured over the barrel to prevent the bronze from cracking in the cold air. Each night, defenders repaired the breach with rubble and timber. Each morning, the cannon erased their work. After a month of bombardment, one of Orban's secondary cannons exploded. Orban was standing beside it. A fragment of bronze struck him in the side. He died on the ground next to the weapon he had built. The walls collapsed.
On May 29th at 1:30 in the morning, Mehmed ordered the final assault. 80,000 soldiers surged forward in the darkness. The cannon fired its last shots into the breach. The Janissaries poured through the gap. Constantinople fell by dawn. The walls held for 1,000 years. The migration took a single season. Now here is why this story matters to you. Constantine XI was not stupid. He recognized Orban's value. He understood the technology. He could see that the world was changing. He simply could not afford to act on what he saw. He lacked the bronze. He lacked the resources. He lacked the institutional capacity to capture the migration point. Mehmed could, not because he was smarter, because he was willing to mobilize everything behind a capability that the incumbent could not fund. This is the first law of the physics of asymmetry. When a constraint collapses, the adjacent thing becomes the prize. For 1,000 years, the binding constraint on Mediterranean military strategy was fortification. Walls held. Everything was organized around that assumption. Orban's cannon collapsed it. Value migrated from defensive architecture to offensive engineering, from the thickness of the wall to the bore of the gun. This exact pattern is playing out right now with artificial intelligence. The constraint that organized the knowledge economy for decades was the cost and time of producing analysis, text, code, strategy, and creative work. That constraint has collapsed, and the value is migrating. The person your organization cannot afford to hire, the capability you dismissed as too expensive, the technology you acknowledged but could not fund, that is Orban. And Orban is already walking through the gate toward whoever will give him the bronze. The question is not whether your wall will hold. The question is whether you are building at the migration point. Constantinople's walls held for 1,000 years. They fell in a single season, not because the walls were weak, because the constraint had migrated, and the emperor was standing at the collapse, staring at the rubble, while the prize moved somewhere he could not see.